Hello everyone and welcome back to the Black History Month series. Today Saha and I meet speech and language therapist Awurabena and speak to her about her journey as a speech and language therapist and also discuss starting her Masters at UCL University. Awurabena, it's great to have you today.
Thank
you. We just wanted to start off with from the beginning really. So how did you first come across speech and language therapy?
Well, I was working in a school, a Japanese school actually in London, for expat families that are here for 2 or 3 years or maybe a bit more. So I was working as an English teacher there, English conversation teacher, and I just had kind of got to the end of my sort of English EAL sort of days, I think. So I was looking for something else to do, and I'd gone on an OT assistant interview, and I didn't get that, but they were like, oh, well, let us know if you're interested in another position that should be coming up soon. So I think when I was looking more into OT, I found speech therapy and I was like, oh, okay, this sounds more like this sounds more like me, sounds more like what I would be interested in. And yeah, I just sort of went in that
way. You moved ships then? You were like,
yes,
I'm going to go for SLT.
Yeah.
Interesting. Did you meet a speech therapist before? Have you ever,
no, I didn't actually. My mum was she was a nurse and social worker for adults with learning disabilities. So she knew about speech therapists, but I didn't know anything about speech therapists. So when I mentioned it to her, she was like, oh, my friend's daughter's a speech therapist, and and then I got to speak to her colleague's daughter, and she sort of helped me with my application and things like that. And that was it really, but I hadn't met any speech therapists before I applied to the job, and actually kind of until I went on placement. I hadn't really seen it in action, but I just felt really drawn to the role and the client group. And I think a lot of us have had experiences with people who have communication difficulties, even if you don't necessarily know what it is, because I had met lots of people with communication difficulties, like, family, friends, or people who had had a stroke or something, but I just didn't really know what the condition was called, or it was just like, oh, they just have trouble talking, and that was sort of it really. I didn't really think past that.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think like most people that I've spoken to, like on the podcast as well, haven't really met a speech therapist before. So I find that it was sort of like just stumbled across it and just thought, oh, this sounds good, I'm gonna go for it.
That's the exact word, stumbled across it. But yeah, I'm glad I did.
And thinking about like the course, so what did you enjoy the most about the course? Was it like the modules or the placements or something else?
I think it was a mix of everything really, because I really enjoyed the course and the modules. One of my favorite things was phonetics, which a lot of people didn't actually like phonetics, but I just loved it, just because I'm so interested in languages and sounds and stuff like that. And I remember in one of the phonetics lectures, so in my home language, which I'm not fluent in, there's a sound that I've never been able to pronounce properly, and we did it in phonetics, and I was like, oh my gosh,
I could do
that's how you say it. So yeah, I learned to say that sound through phonetics, but before that I was like, this is so interesting. I love like learning about all of that stuff. So I found all of that really interesting, and then when I went on placement, I really enjoyed just the practical aspect of it. I think my first couple of years when I was doing the children's placement, and also because it was the first time that I was doing placement, I think it was kind of a lot to take in, but sort of in my next placements in, adults and things like that, I had a bit more understanding, a bit more grounding, and I was more able to sort of see where it was leading, see what the therapists were doing, and kind of think a bit more about the client. So I really did enjoy being on placement, and also I didn't have as much responsibility at that time, so it was nice to just go in, do the sessions, leave it at that sort of thing. So
you can try things and it's
Yeah.
fine. You've got like a safety net sort of
Exactly.
under you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
it's
it was
interesting.
good. It was really good.
Yeah, I think it's thinking about, you know, like how we talk and the sounds that we make and everything that's involved with that is something that we don't really think about. And then when you start studying in the course, it's like, wow, like
yeah,
crazy. So that's really interesting. Was there anything that you found challenging or difficult in the course while you were studying?
I think it's a very intense course. Because I'd studied before, actually, I did something else. But I think that there's so many different elements to it that it was a lot to sort of, you know, keep on top of, remembering, and then just having confidence in what I was doing. So that was quite challenging. But I did have a really good support network at uni, so I had really lovely friends, and a lot of the lecturers were really supportive when I was at uni. So I feel like at that time the challenges, the sort of positives outweighed the challenges. Just before I finished the course, I did have quite a challenging year, but aside from that, it was quite good, quite positive.
Yeah, that's really good to hear.
Yeah, I think if I hadn't spoken out about it, then it would have been a bit more tricky, I think.
Yeah, and that's really good of you, because I think when you're a student, you're already stressing about something, and then you're not really sure what's going to happen next if you do sort of express that, whether it's for your like placement educator or uni. So it is hard to take that first step, isn't it?
It is, and I think the thing is that I was a mature student, so I feel like I had that sort of, I guess, adult confidence, whatever you want to call it. I wasn't new to university, so I knew that there were things that I could do. But if I was just new at uni, I don't know what I probably wouldn't have said anything. So that was sort of on my side, but even still, it was still difficult because you're still in that position where you don't really know what's going to happen or how people are going to react or whether you're going to pass and all of these things. But yeah, I think being a little bit older and knowing more information and knowing already that I had quite supportive lecturers really helped me in that situation. If I hadn't had all of those things, it would have been a sticky situation.
Yeah, that's really good to hear that you had that support. Yeah, really nice to hear.
Year is never easy. Like, you've just got so much going on anyway. So
yeah,
that's good to hear that you kind of, you had that support and
yeah. But it's funny because not everybody, even in that same year, not everyone had felt that. Even within my friends, some of them didn't feel that same level of support or didn't get that level of support, and you know, they went on different paths, etc. So you know, it's one of those things, isn't it? Like, just because I had a good experience doesn't necessarily mean that everybody else did, even if they were mature students as well and had access to information and things like that. It didn't work out well for everyone. So yeah, I'm quite mindful of that as well.
And what are 2 things that you kind of didn't know about speech and language therapy?
That's a good question. 2 things that I didn't know that speech therapists supported eating and drinking. I had no clue about that. So that was a really big surprise. Gosh, there were so many things that I didn't know. I'm trying to think of like the most shocking ones. Yeah, that was the main. I didn't know about dysphagia, and I didn't know. I think I also didn't know how much goes into speech and language. I think, like everybody else, especially with the title, you just think, oh, it's about talking properly and things like that. So actually learning the breadth of things that speech and language therapists do was quite, and still is, quite surprising, because sometimes you hear about what people are doing and you're like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. I didn't realize that you know, you could do this with this client group, or, you know, so yeah, always surprising things.
Yeah, it's all the other things that we do, I guess, that people wouldn't necessarily think of. I mean, trying to explain what we do is really difficult as it
Yeah,
is.
so difficult.
So I think a lot of people probably don't realize what we do like day to day and how varied it
Yeah,
is.
yeah. I think it's one of the most varied roles that I know, really. There's so many things you can do. There's so many different paths. And even if you're with the same client group, the job that you're doing could be completely different. So that's a really good thing about speech therapy. Makes it exciting.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? Yeah, no day's the same.
Mm-hmm.
And what would you say, so now as you're working as speech and language therapist, what would you say your interests sort of lie? Where are you working currently? Where would you like to sort of develop your skills further as well?
Yeah, I wanted to do everything. I'm greedy. So I've been working with pediatrics since I qualified. So from sort of 2 till basically 19. So I've done mainstream schools, I've done preschools, and then for the last sort of 4 years I've done more special schools, and mainly children who are on the spectrum, autistic children and young people, which I love. I really enjoy working with that client group. So yeah, I think I'd want to continue with the more sort of complex needs cohort, because there's so much to learn there, and I really enjoy working with them. But I'm still not, you know, so many years later, I'm still not exactly sure what my main thing is, because I just find everything so interesting, and so important. So yeah, I'm not too sure yet, but I have a feeling it's probably still going to be with children. Probably like teens to sort of early adulthood sort of age. So,
It's
yeah.
really hard to choose, isn't it?
It's so hard. I don't know how people do it. You know, people are like, yep, I want to do this specific thing. That's never been me. So
yeah, and yeah, it's I find it really, I'm always like jumping from one thing to the next.
yeah.
Yeah, so do you want to tell us a little bit about your masters? So you're starting your masters, right?
Yes, yeah. I started, thank you. I started a couple of weeks ago, I think. Everything's sort of merging into one for me at the moment. I'm so confused. But yes, I'm doing a master's in speech, language and cognition at UCL, and it's a master's of research. So I chose it because I really wanted to learn more about research as a whole in the area of speech and language. So yes, it just felt like the best thing for me to do to get that really good grounding, so that I could go further on in the future to do my own research and get involved in the whole sort of clinical academic side. So not just the academic side, but sort of keeping that clinical part of my life and skills active at the same time as doing research.
Yeah, and how was you did it through NIHR, right?
Yes, I
How
did.
how was that process? Is it stressful?
Oh
is it fun?
gosh,
Because it
is.
scares me.
Oh my goodness, honestly, it's such a long process. I don't want to put anybody off. It's long, but it's doable. Do you know what I mean? It's not that bad. It's just intense.
Okay.
So they do stuff like little things like the deadline is at like 12 or like 11:59 on the day that you have to, like those sort of things that make you feel really stressed. And it does take a lot of energy, but there's actually quite a lot of information there. So I actually applied twice. So the first year, I actually applied to NIHR 3 times, actually, I've just remembered. So a few years back, they had started this internship thing. I forgot what it's called, but it's another scheme that you can do, and it's like 6 months and you can get sort of basic skills in research through work. And I applied for it, but I was unsuccessful. And then I sort of just forgot about it, got on with my life. And then one of my colleagues was doing the NIHR PCAF scheme, what does it stand for again? Let me try and remember. Pre-doctoral PCAF. Can't remember.
Yeah.
Anyways.
I can't remember. I can Google it quickly, but
Yeah. I should know this.
I've been looking at their website, so I feel like I should know it as well. Clinical Academic Fellowship.
Thank you.
That's the one.
Pre-doctoral. It is pre-doctoral, isn't it?
Yeah,
pre-doctoral Clinical Academic Fellowship.
Yeah, that's
what a name. PCAF for short. She was doing it and she was talking to me about it, and I was really interested in all of her work. And I've always been interested in research anyway. So I went to an open day at UCL, and they're so helpful. They really support their applicants through the whole process. So I applied, and I was unsuccessful the first year, but they're really good because they give you lots and lots of feedback on what you can do better. So the whole point of the PCAF is to give clinicians that dedicated time to sort of hone their skills in research. Excuse me. So like if you don't have a master's, you can use some of that time to get a master's, which is what I'm doing. Or if you already have a master's, then you can just kind of get on with your research and do other things.
Yeah.
So the first time I was applying for the master's and the PCAF at the same time.
Oh wow.
So that was just like that was too much. But then and then I was unsuccessful. But then this year I was only applying for the PCAF because I already had a space on the masters, and I kept my subject the same, and most of the things like the team that was supporting me mostly the same. So it was a lot easier for me this year to timetable it and think about how much time I needed to research, to read things, to change things around, to contact people, but I still handed it in on the deadline day, like like an hour before 12, whatever it is. Honestly, they need to change that, because it's just, I don't understand why it has to be 12 o'clock. Why not just give us the whole day? Yeah, but it is intense, like I keep saying, but it is definitely doable. You just need time, you need people who are going to support you, and you need something that you're interested in, and that's an interesting question for the research world. So yeah, I'll definitely encourage you to, even if you kind of just look into it for a year and start sort of planning what you want to do a year before, that will definitely help you for the next stages.
Yeah. I don't know, Saha, is this something that you're interested in, or have you looked into it?
I've looked into it, but I have to be honest, I feel like I've still got, it's not been that long since I've finished off the masters, and I feel like it's still like the feeling of going back to uni scares me a bit now, because I remember especially like the last year of uni, I was just like a complete mess. But
oh gosh,
I think something for the future. But yeah, really interesting, like stammering and voice stuff, and but like you said, I can't decide anything, so my mind's
Yeah, I have looked into it, but I think it just stressed me out a little bit. So I think well done for getting accepted and starting it. That's so exciting.
Yeah, it is really exciting. I'm really looking forward to kind of, I mean, I've started it, but just kind of getting on with the sort of nitty-gritty of it and everything. But anyone who's watching, don't let it put you off. Like, you can do it. It's just sort of little bits at the time. If you need a break from, and you don't have to go to uni, like I said, if you've got a master's already, you're all right. But because I didn't, I had to, because it's also meant to prepare you for sort of applying for a PhD and being involved in post-doctoral studies. So a master's is something that is necessary. So that's why I'm doing mine. But yeah, it is a lot to kind of go from working back to uni.
Yeah,
getting back in that mindset.
yeah. But I bet it's quite nice though when I find it quite nice. Like I attended, I think it was a CPD on stammering. That was advertised on Twitter a while ago, and I was like, wow, I actually miss studying. Like I feel like I've learned something. So I quite like that feeling. Like, but I don't know if I wasn't assessed, so maybe if I'm assessed, then my feelings will change.
Oh gosh, I haven't even thought that far yet. Like, let's just do the lectures.
Let's not think about that. Yeah, and you've been doing some amazing things with the girls on the Listen In podcast as well.
Thank you.
Do you want to tell us how that sort of came about and how that sort of started?
Yeah, so it just came about from just conversations, because we always, so me, Anya and Bumi knew each other from uni, and me and Anya graduated the same year, and then Bumi was a year after us, I believe. And just as we were working and going through just competencies and the different stages, we were always calling each other, always talking. And then we just started realizing that we were having quite similar experiences or similar feelings. And then earlier on in the year, I can't remember exactly what happened, but we both Anya and I had a certain experience, and we were talking about it. And we're like, gosh, like, I wonder why this is, I wonder why that is. And then we ended up, through our conversation, sort of getting to the bottom of it. And then we were both like, do you know what, we need to actually talk about this more and kind of just put our stories out there to encourage other people, to let them know some of the things that we've been through, because they might have been through similar things, and just to sort of let them know that they can do it. And we'd also had these sort of talks with Bumi as well, whenever, I mean, Bumi lives outside of London, so we don't see her as much, but whenever we used to meet up, and when we weren't talking about stuff outside of work, when we were talking about work stuff, these sort of things came up as well. So we were just like, you know what, let's just try and put this little podcast together, and just see what happens. And that was before like lockdown and everything. It was just sort of an like idea. And then when lockdown happened, we were like, okay,
perfect opportunity.
Since we've got the time, let's start with it. So yeah, it just sort of started from there, really.
Oh, I love the podcast. Like I've been.
Oh, thank you.
Listening every time you like post something, and I think it's so nice how open and honest you all are, and like vulnerable experiences. I think you guys did one about professional identity, and so much of it resonated with me.
Oh, good.
So thank you. Just keep doing what you're doing.
Oh, thank you. Like, we're always a bit like, I wonder if anyone's gonna like relate to it. And our whole thing in the beginning was like, do you know what, if we do it and at least one person gets something out of it, then that's fine. So we've been so shocked at the amount of people that are like, oh, I feel like that too, or I've experienced that as well. So thank you for that. That's really encouraging.
Yeah, definitely. It's just nice to have that open space and for like other people, and as well thinking about like student SLTs and NQTs that are like coming up and into the profession as well. Like I just think when I was a student and when I first qualified, if something like that was out there, it would be amazing. It would have been so good.
And I think also, like, with you guys as well doing this podcast, I feel like we're all supporting each other in different ways. So like listening to you guys' things, we're also like, oh yeah, that's really good, or like it helps us not feel alone, because obviously our one, we don't really, I think you guys are sort of brave to be out there on the camera and stuff. We're not at that level yet. So and actually a lot of the things that you're talking about are quite hard hitting and things that make people feel quite uncomfortable. So I think all of these things, SLTs of colour, all these things that have just kind of come out this year are really important and really help all of us together to keep sort of growing and keep putting our message out there, to raise awareness, but also to encourage other people as well. So
definitely. And I think even for us, like for me to reflect on myself as a speech therapist and how I react when I'm working with like a certain client group as well, just having that awareness myself, I think that's even helped me as a clinician, or like with students as well, thinking about not just taking it as a generic sort of, you just have a student and you just go through, you know, the normal steps, but actually thinking deeper in terms of like what might be going on for them, and thinking more like holistically, I guess, which is what we're supposed to be doing anyway, but which you know, so I think it's even helped me think about different things that I can put in my work, so it's great.
No, definitely.
Yeah, so what's one thing that you wish people or like your clients knew about speech and language therapy? It can be more than one thing.
I think for me, one thing I'd want them to know is that we're here for them, that it's okay. I find that a lot of, at least in my experience, especially with parents who are from minority groups, a lot of them actually come in with a lot of like fear and worry about actually coming into therapy, which isn't always, they don't necessarily say it. So yeah, I think I'd want them to know that we're not there to like judge them. I hope we're not. We're not there to judge them. We're just there to help them, to work with them, to support them with whatever it is that they need that support for at that time. Because I remember one mum that I worked with, at the end of the block, she was from an African country, like me, and near the end of the block, she was like, you know, it was really hard for her to even accept being you know, referred for speech therapy, and it was so hard for her to even come to the sessions. But now and I didn't do anything special. It wasn't like anything amazing, but I think had to help her to feel comfortable and feel like she could be in sessions and say what she thought and cry or whatever it is that she wanted to, not wanted to, but whatever it is that she felt. I had to try and create an environment that was okay for her to do that, which thankfully that did happen, and she then was a lot more open to other things. So I just wish that, because you just don't know what's happened before then. You don't know what people's told them, you don't know what they've been thinking about, the process of being referred, what people have said, you just don't know. So I wish I could just let them know that it's like we're there for them, we're there to be with them along the journey, even if it's just a short part of the journey, but that's what we're there for. So yeah, very long-winded explanation.
No, it's lovely. And it's funny that you said you didn't do anything special, but I kind of think that you did if she opened up that much and said that at the block. And that's something I've experienced too with families, and you can tell how nervous they are in that first session. But no, that's really lovely to hear. Thank you.
And I think sometimes as well, like sometimes people don't, obviously everybody's emotions come across in different ways. And I would like to share a story, but I'm thinking it might identify someone a bit. So I'm going to try and think about a way to say it. But I remember a situation at work with a parent, and she basically sort of stormed out of a group session, and she was a Black parent. And I sort of went out and just talked to her, and she was like, oh, I hate speech therapy, blah, blah, blah. And I just tried to just calm her down, make her feel like it was okay and it's fine. Like, these things happen all the time, don't worry, like, it's fine, come back next week. And she did come back, and then she just kept on coming to the sessions, and she was so like engaged after that. But I think that you know, rushing out of the session and that sort of anger, it looked like anger. It wasn't anger. She was quite embarrassed at that time, but it's just her way of showing it was, you know, probably going to be read as anger by most people. So I think that's important to always kind of keep in mind, really.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's some really good points. And sort of moving on to, I know you said that you love working in sort of, did you say it was special schools that you most enjoy working in? Yeah. So what's the thing that you love the most about being a speech and language therapist in terms of like the day-to-day?
it might be a bit cliche, but I just really like being with the clients and being with the students and just having that interaction with them. Excuse me. Just being with that person, and kind of, I really also enjoy helping people to see what they can do. I think when I first qualified and I first started working, I think it was quite easy to sort of point out, they can't do this, they can't do that, or they're finding this difficult. But actually, like, looking for the strengths and building on that is quite a skill, and it's a skill that I'm trying my best to learn. So I really enjoy sort of finding those things and building on those skills with the person or with their family or with the team. I find that quite to be one of the best parts of the jobs, even if it's not necessarily on the surface looking great. It might not look great, it might be not the best session, but I feel like as long as we've got that rapport and we've got that sort of feeling, that sort of communication together, I really enjoy those sort of sessions.
Yeah, definitely. I think nothing can beat that sort of face-to-face, like, interaction.
And I also really like those cheeky kids that just say something random to make you laugh, or like just say the funniest things. You're like, well, where did this come from? So yeah.
And moving on from that, what do you find challenging about, you know, being a speech and language therapist or a student speech and language therapist?
One of the things that I've always found challenging is either people not being able to access what they need, which will really help them, or me not being able to help them in the way that I know I can. I've always found that really frustrating, and I still do now. I know that there's rules, there's commissioners, there's this, there's that, but sometimes I'm just like, why? There must be a way around this, you know. And it's quite sad, especially when sometimes there's little things that would make a huge difference to someone, and they just can't access it, whether it's in this country or abroad. That's really challenging.
That's really hard. I think I tweeted something about this today.
I saw that.
I was just had a moment of frustration, and then I was like, oh my god, did I just open up a can of worms? Because that wasn't my intention. Like, my intention was literally like, is there something out there for people that don't have access? And you know, every trust, you know, we know that there's postcode lottery, and we know that every trust works differently in terms of what they accept, and you sort of have to follow those rules. And I guess the next, or the alternative, is really to get private therapy, right, if you can afford it. But many children can't, their parents can't afford that, and they can't access that. And it is a matter of fact that we're not seeing all children that need speech and language needs, no matter how minor that need is. So I was actually thinking, does such a thing exist? Because I want to sign up to it. But it's a shame, isn't it? Because it should be that the NHS covers that. That's what the NHS is for. But we know that that's not reality. Like, as much as I love the NHS and I'd always work for the NHS, I think that's just my sort of personal preference. I know that it doesn't cover everything for whatever reason. And there's no point in pretending that it does, I guess. Okay, so to sort of round this off, is there any advice that you would give to current speech and language therapists, or maybe students even?
I think what I would say is to just continue to be yourself, know that you can do it, just take it one step at a time. And just see if you can find people around you that would be really encouraging. And don't be afraid to make links either. Sometimes it's just good to just reach out to people. I've been really surprised at how well some people have responded to me, some people that I've never met in person, but I've sent them an email or I've asked them a question and they've responded, and it's been really helpful. Not everybody, obviously, but some, like, I remember one time I emailed this random professor in America about something. She emailed back within 15 minutes. I was like, oh my goodness. Wow. So I think just don't be afraid to just put yourself out there a little bit. And it's okay to make mistakes as well. Like, we're all learning, we're all growing, we all have something to learn as well. So yeah, just keep being yourself, take it easy a little bit. And yeah, you can do it. You can definitely do it.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
It's been great to have you on and to talk about some of the things that you were doing. And wish you best of luck with your masters.
Good luck.
I'll do my best.
And yeah, with your future speech and language therapist, I'm sure you'll do some amazing things.
Thank you, and thank you for having me. And yeah, let's keep in contact outside of this.
Definitely. Yeah, you're very welcome. Thank you for listening to the third episode in the Black History Month series featuring speech and language therapist Awurabena. Please do join us next week for our final episode in this series. Also, please do leave your thoughts and comments on our social media platforms. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram.
Be sure to follow our Twitter and our Instagram,
SLT Time,
at SLT Time,
SLT Time, to keep up to date with new episode releases.
And that's the SLT for today.